The Sakamoto family may look normal, but let me tell you, they are far from it. From the most legendary assassin of them all, a clairvoyant, the son of the founder of Japan's most powerful assassin group, a member of that group, and more, the Sakamoto fam is unlike anything you've seen before. And so to start things off, we have to talk about the foundation of this tight-knit crew. It's of course Sakamoto Taro, his wife and daughter. However, life before then for the big chap was wildly different. Sakamoto had a reputation of being the greatest assassin to ever live, a man who struck fear into the hearts of everyone who stood before him. Every hitman around the globe looked at Sakamoto with awe. He was him. But in spite of always expecting the unexpected as an assassin, Sakamoto couldn't predict what would happen next in his life. Because one day he was out shopping at a store when he met Aoi. It was love at first sight. Bro insta-simped, ultimately leading to the two dating, but there was one big problem. Sakamoto was still working as a top assassin for an elite group called the Order. Aoi, however, wasn't a fan of his dangerous, emotionless lifestyle. Thus, she wanted him to understand the true value of life. And so Aoi threw herself off a balcony to show Sakamoto what it felt like to lose someone he loved. Using his insane skills, Sakamoto jumped in to save her just in time, but the lesson hit him hard. That moment of anguish made him realize how others must feel when he kills their loved ones. As a result, Bro promised to never take another life again and instead dedicate himself to helping others, all in an effort to make up for the lives he had taken in the past. Now retired from his life as an assassin and the Order, the two got married and started fresh. Sakamoto was still living in an abandoned building that he was allowed to use, where he would sometimes work out on the lower level, when Aoi had a moment of genius. In that same building, the two opened a cozy little supermarket called Sakamoto's. Once he got used to his new life, Sakamoto was blessed with a daughter called Hana. He had little experience with kids outside of one escort mission in the past, but that ended up giving him the most valuable information of his life. Because of it, he knew how to make kids happy, noticing that a fat assassin seemed to make them giggle, which is lucky, as over the years Sakamoto became accustomed to his new peaceful life, dedicating his time to becoming the best dad possible. This in turn though meant that he wasn't dedicating himself to staying fit. This seemingly made him an easy target for anyone in his past life still out to get him. This is why Shin Asakura re-entered Sakamoto's life. But the true reason for visiting him again was actually to assassinate Sakamoto. You see, Shin is no ordinary hitman. He's got clairvoyant abilities, meaning that he can actually read minds with ESP. He wasn't born with these abilities though. Rather, it was a total accident. You see, Shin was raised in a lab by Professor Asakura at the Okutabi Science Museum. At first, he hated Shin as he was left with him by a friend of his named Ando, who abandoned the young boy. But over time, Shin and Asakura grew close, with him acting as the closest thing he had to a parent. But everything changed when one night, Shin accidentally drank the magnum opus science experiment that Asakura had spent years working on, a creation nobody believed he could pull off: the ability to grant someone clairvoyance. But the people around him in the lab no longer felt safe with Shin. The idea that he could listen into their thoughts at any moment scared them, and so over time Shin was once again abandoned. Thus, he left the lab behind in search of his father, Tasuko Ando. During those 4 years though, Shin found himself sneaking around in assassin business, which is how he became one of the few people who knew the truth about Sakamoto's legendary past, which is how Shin tracked him down. Despite these advantages though, Sakamoto is skilled enough to completely block Shin's mind-reading powers, feeding him false images of Shin's own assassination instead. No one else comes close to completely countering Shin like this, except for maybe Nagumo, but that's another story. Because whilst some enemies can bypass Shin's ESP, none can do it as effortlessly as Sakamoto Taro. During their fight, it becomes clear just how outmatched Shin is, as Sakamoto deflects his bullet with a cough drop, before then handing him the fattest L of his assassin career. But after waking up and being cared for by Sakamoto's family, Shin started to see things differently. He saw the value in life just how Sakamoto did. Realizing this, Shin returned to his boss and begged to spare Sakamoto's life. His boss in turn tried to manipulate Shin into killing himself, forgetting that he could literally read minds. Nonetheless, as Shin fights for his life, he's totally outnumbered, which is when Sakamoto comes to his rescue. In return, he gives Shin the chance to work for him at the store. Well, I say give him a chance, Shin never really had a say in it. But this is where Shin learns the most important rules of being accepted into the Sakamoto family, the most important of which being a totally foreign concept to any assassin: no killing. Something which becomes clear when Aoi's involved in a bus jacking incident. The two, reunited on a mission for the first time in years, stopped the bus and saved the day. But it was clear that there was still room for Shin to grow in strength though. After all, despite being able to read minds, it's useless if his body can't keep up with his brain. Luckily, he grew a lot, but more on that later, because the Sakamoto fam wasn't finished recruiting new members just yet, as that's when they meet Lu Shaotang, a fierce martial artist and daughter of a Chinese triad family who's in a scuffle with some thugs, showing off her crazy tai chi skills which impress Shin. In spite of this, he and Sakamoto jump in to help. You see, after Lu's parents were killed, they left her with a key to their hidden safe. A key that very dangerous dudes now wanted for themselves. Therefore, Sakamoto saw an opportunity. He needed Lu's extremely insane ability for himself. What was this ability? Her martial arts? Otherworldly riches? Her Chinese connections? No. The ability to make pork buns. And so when the people who killed Lu's parents came after her, Sakamoto once again stepped in to help. However, this gave us a glimpse into the harsh world in which Lu grew up in, a world where she had to become strong just to survive. But even she is shocked when Sakamoto absolutely destroys the killers. Now, unlike him and Shin though, who had to be convinced to stop killing, Lu made that choice on her own already. She refuses to kill her enemies, believing that if she started to do so, the cycle of violence would never end. A mindset which made her perfect for Sakamoto's family. Unfortunately, she sucked ass at her job. It was her first job, and worse was that she would turn up 2 hours late. But even then, Lu grew close to Sakamoto, close enough to notice that something wasn't quite right one morning. Not only was the boss talkative, he was like an entirely new person. And well, what do you know? It was. This is Nagumo, aka the #1 aura farmer of Sakamoto Days. He is from a family of assassins and has the ability to copy other people's appearances perfectly and almost instantly. What's more is that him and Sakamoto go way back. They first met at the JCC when they were just 14 years old, growing close over the years to the point where Nagumo genuinely cares about Sakamoto, so much so that he doesn't want him to be in danger, hence why he dropped into the store to say hello. He wanted to let his big old buddy know that there was now a bounty on Sakamoto's head, a bounty of 1 billion yen. He was officially a target of the Japanese Association of Assassins. In fact, it was in that exact moment that Nagumo saved Sakamoto's life from a pizza assassin. Before he could snap the dude's neck though, he learned that the legendary Sakamoto and his family now operated on a strictly no-kill basis. But despite missing his friend and worrying for Sakamoto, Nagumo left him alone for now, warning him of the endless danger about to re-enter his life. Dangers such as Heisuke. His life has always been defined by one thing: quick scoping. Literally, my guy is one Huddy Allen song away from featuring in a phasal cams. If you know, you know, leave a like. Nonetheless, sniping was the only skill Heisuke was ever good at, and so despite struggling with almost everything else, he managed to graduate from the Assassin Academy and land a job at an agency. When introducing himself to those around him, Heisuke admitted upfront that he wasn't great at much, but promised to give it his best effort. Unfortunately though, this honesty didn't go down well. One of his superiors immediately dismissed him, seeing someone with only one single talent as totally useless. And while as Heisuke went on missions, his shortcomings became more and more apparent, and before long he was fired. Losing his job sent Heisuke into a downward spiral. Thus, with no work and no support, he ended up broke and living in his grandmother's old patchwork tent on top of a building with his only friend in the world, his pet bird Bisuke. Or at least that was the case until it blew away in the wind. And so, hungry and desperate, Heisuke came up with a plan: claim the bounty on Sakamoto's head. But after falling for the oldest trick in the book, he failed. Nonetheless, Heisuke decided to enter an airsoft tournament with a grand prize of 1 million yen, and that was when he crossed paths with Sakamoto and Shin, convincing them to let him join their team. But thanks to Lou's carelessness, Heisuke realized the truth about Sakamoto's identity and turned against them. Heisuke even managed to injure Sakamoto twice with his insane ricochet bullets. However, Sakamoto proved once again why he is the GOAT. Shin startled Heisuke, causing him to accidentally reveal his thoughts, which allowed Sakamoto to pinpoint his exact location, giving him the chance to destroy Heisuke's rifle with nothing but a rock. Despite this betrayal though, the team went on to win the airsoft tournament together, but Heisuke was only given a share of 50 yen for the damage he caused. Nonetheless, he was rewarded with something far better, a position in Sakamoto's family and a job at the store. Together they all grew incredibly close, going on multiple missions to protect Sakamoto from his bounty. Except Lou. I'm not gonna lie, pretty sure the author forgot Lou as a character that he himself created and is allowed to use in his own story, but it is what it is. However, the bounty wasn't the only thing worrying the Sakamoto fam now. More specifically, it was a man known simply as X or Slur. You see, he's actually a former ally of Sakamoto during his assassin days known as Kei Azuki, and so in order to find out information on him, Sakamoto infiltrates the JCC Academy as a new teacher in the disguise of Aoi thanks to the powers of Nagumo. Meanwhile, Shin enrolls as a student to get some much needed good old shonen training in, which is exactly where he meets Amane Yotsumura, a student and devoted follower of X and his group. He is a vengeful teenager driven by an intense hatred for his father, Satoru Yotsumura, the former number 2 of the JAA and founding order member, who he blames for killing his mother. This grudge fuels his rebellious nature, making him hostile towards authority figures, including the teachers at the JCC. Thus, Amane refuses to attend classes and even discourages his classmates from interacting with Sakamoto, who even tries to offer him advice. This is because beneath his rough demeanor, Sakamoto can tell that Amane is surprisingly sincere and capable of self-reflection. For example, he apologizes to his roommate after angrily stating that everyone in the JAA deserves to die, realizing he had offended them by forgetting some of their relatives were part of the organization. Nonetheless, Amane was tasked by an ally of X to destroy the database holding information on Azuki, the same database Sakamoto was after. However, he failed and instead was tasked with disabling the JCC's defensive missile system so that X's group could massacre the JAA. This made Amane second guess the intentions of X. He wanted his dad dead for what he did, but he didn't want everyone else. In spite of this, he was tricked with some mind control to momentarily disable the system regardless, ending in a war against X's crew. Thankfully, Amane took after his dad and was strong. You see, before he was overcome with hatred, Amane was close with his father, and even mastered how to use his 3-section staff, claiming it was too easy, thus learned to wield a 4-section one instead, earning the praise of Sakamoto by using it to steal a key from him. Furthermore, Shin also leveled up from his training, aiding in the battle. That's because he was learning from Satoda Sensei, a legendary teacher at the academy who had taught generations of top assassins. You see, he didn't spend his time with Sakamoto doing nothing. He worked on his ESP, enabling him to now see 0.5 seconds into the future, making it easier to dodge attacks. But to complement this ability, a friend called Seba, who he'd become reacquainted with during his time at the JCC, gave him a faulty weapon he had worked on, a powerful glove that turns off the limiter in the brain, giving the user access to extreme strength. The downside was that there was a lag. The excess power wasn't released until a few seconds later. Seba, however, adjusted this lag to just 0.5 seconds, reducing some of the strength, but making it suitable to use with Shin's ability to look into the future. This power allowed him to defeat Carolina Reaper, one of X's allies who hypnotized Amane. Nonetheless, following the tragedy that occurred at the JCC, Amane found himself spending more time with the Sakamoto family, even if he did struggle to fit into ordinary life. What's important though is that even if indirectly he followed their main rule, he wouldn't kill anyone, he simply wanted to find his father. That, however, would prove to be somewhat difficult. You see, Satoru Yotsumura was dead, or at least presumed to be by the order member and friend of Sakamoto's, Shishiba. The reality of the situation though is that Nagumo kept him alive in secret. As the former number 2 of the JAA, Nagumo wanted to use him and his connections to investigate the death of a friend of both his and Sakamoto's from their younger years named Rion Akao. It was thanks to him that they learned that Rion Akao was actually still alive, kinda. You see, X had adopted her entire persona down to a T as part of his split personality disorder, and used it to put the 1 billion yen bounty on Sakamoto so that he would come after her, as it was Rion who first said Sakamoto was worth that much. They learned this insane revelation during the Assassin Exhibition of the Century, which X planned to use as the stage for a bombing to kill the chairman of the JAA. Once learning that a cow lived on inside of X and even asked Sakamoto to kill them to stop X, Nagumo and him ignored orders and escaped with them to discuss things. As a result, the JCC chairman made Sakamoto and Nagumo special Class A extermination targets wanted for conspiracy against the JAA. As a result, Nagumo lost his place in the order with nowhere to go. But of course, that is where Sakamoto as always comes in. Whilst like Amane, he's not an employee, thus not a technical member of the family, there is no doubt that it is soon heading that way. You see, Nagumo was even camping out with them in secret and used his powers to help the family stay hidden from the Order, who were out searching for them. But all of this made Sakamoto begin to wonder if he even belonged here. Did he deserve his family? Especially after all the danger he had now put them through. Nagumo claimed that he only had 2 choices if he wanted to continue his familial life, and that was to either kill X and prove his innocence to the JAA, or destroy the JAA entirely. But that's when Sakamoto chose the secret hidden third option. Take over the JAA and make it a global Sakamoto supermarket chain.
Is this serious?
That was the only way to not only ensure financial stability for his family, but also clear all of their names. And so he began training by facing the Order, whilst the others trained under Sakamoto's own former sensei Kindaka. Shin especially at this point had once again leveled up. He could now overwrite people's thoughts by sending precise electrical signals to the basal ganglia in the brain, momentarily hijacking the target's mind and body for a split second. Essentially, it was momentary mind control. However, due to the body's natural defenses, this power can only be used on the same person once. That limitation doesn't apply when the current is generated and directed within the own user's body though. Thus, Shin can use this ability on himself as many times as he wants. By commanding his brain to operate at peak speed, he essentially is able to shift his perception, making the entire world around him appear to move in ultra slow motion, allowing him to catch the arrow fired by Tenkyu at point blank range. You see, he totally overpowered this kid, who bear in mind was from this same orphanage of X and his crew, who were raised from a young age to be Order members by the JAA. In fact, had it not been for Sakamoto appearing at the final second, Shin would have straight up killed Tenkyu then and there for threatening to kill Aoi and Hana, thus breaking the most important rule of the Sakamoto family. Thankfully, Sakamoto was able to remind him of the man that he is. Now, if you want to enjoy more peak fiction, then I recommend that you click this video on your screen right now.